how did like in that sort of time shifted your mind, your idea of what energy is, maybe also the idea of how the world works? Because that I remember was for me quite a big shift, for like noticing, okay, there's energy, and this might actually be the underlying force of everything that's happening. Was something like that for you happening as well?
Well, that's a big question. I mean, try to take it. Things were already changing because I've been meditating for a long time. I'd already been living abroad for, probably 15, 20 years by that time. So my worldview had already greatly changed back in the 90s. So, I
Okay.
passed through that phase. I left Chicago in 92. So it's 15 years I'm living outside of my birth country. So already I'm, a very different political, economic, cultural perspective on things. In terms of energy, well, Argentina was easier going, and I was meeting a lot more people, fellow travelers, and we spoke English together, and I could start doing Reiki work with them. So now I could actually communicate about these experiences.
Okay.
So there's more of a mature intellectual understanding of things. And realizing, I'll challenge one word that you used, the word belief.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, you don't need to believe anything. Once you know it, you don't need to believe in it. And when you know it so tangibly, so physically, mentally, spiritually, in yourself, and then you see it in dozens of kids and dozens of adults, it's like, there is something so real happening here. What I can say is this: if you want a little proof, is that you are alive. What is it that makes you alive? Now, you can reduce this to a sperm cell and an egg, or my organs, or the oxygen, or the water. Like, yeah, all that is matter, and I agree with all those things. But there's a spark, the spark of life, that if you take somebody and you stop their oxygen for 90 seconds, and then you give them oxygen again, or whatever, let's say 3 minutes without oxygen. You stop the oxygen, and then you turn the oxygen back on again. Now you have all the elements. There's water, there's earth, there's fire, there's body, there are organs, but there's also no life. Life is something beyond the elements. And it's a spark, it's a gift. From where it comes, I don't really know. We could philosophize on that for the next 100,000 years if you like. My battery will run low. There is a spark of life. And this is the awareness that was coming up in the time in South America, up to the present moment. As a farmer in northern Thailand growing organic fruits and vegetables, I'm very concerned with the life force in my coconut trees, in my rambutan trees, my mango trees, and in my fingers, in my heart, in my words, in the gaze of my eyes. All of that, there's so much more than just the physical material parts.
Yeah, just the way you communicate, the way I perceive the words. It's not just the words, it's even through camera, through audio, there is some energy that you bring with you, that you sort of contribute to the vibe of our conversation, like where the energies are touching. And I think I found it also like amazing that you used that example of the life force energy when the spark, you said, the spark of life. Because I also recently like got the idea of some sort of, I think, science YouTube video that I watched, and it was breaking down all individual steps of how a human works. So all how's it called, mitochondrial cells that produce the energy, and like we know how each individual cell works, each atom in them, but we cannot make it out what makes it alive. What is the thing that gives it sort of consciousness? Like that's another whole other level. But just from like the dead cell towards a living cell, a living being, we have no clue what makes it things suddenly become alive. Or then even later, if you look then from, okay, it's alive, but what makes it conscious? What's the thing that gives it this the ability to actually be aware of its own being? That's another thing. It's like, okay, this is the same
Wow.
principle almost. Yeah. We have no clue how to get from A to B.
Yes. And this is where God comes in, because I don't know what the percentage of people in the world who believe in God, but it's a huge number of people believe in God, or they would probably respond, no, Tom, I know God. I'm cool. I'm okay with that. But for me, I don't believe in that. I don't know God as a being. As a force resonates, okay, say, okay, I can understand that. If it is a
Mm-hmm.
being, if God is a being, brilliant. It's just something that I personally don't know and I have not experienced. I'm totally open to it. But if there is that kind of a God, God has not communicated to me in that way. I experience all this as energies and as intuitions, as insights, as eureka, where you suddenly, how do I know that? Where did those words come from? Why do I have consciousness? Why do I exist? Oh yeah, those are God's questions typed into your program. Okay, that may satisfy millions, billions of people, and that's wonderful. And I can sit with all of them and have a great conversation, even though I don't actually have the exact experience of the being. But if we take the notion of God as a being aside for just a moment, and we come back to how does that little cell with its mitochondria produce energy? And it has an energy field. So if the cell is, let's say, I don't know how big a cell is, let's say 1 millimeter, or smaller than that, I know, then the energy field might be, let's say, 10 times that around it, which can be measured. It can be photographed using something like Kirlian photography, which goes back 60 some years. And I'm sure there's higher technology now. I'm not familiar with all of it. Coming out of Russia, I know they've been big on this for probably 2 or 3 generations now.
Hmm.
So you can measure that. It's usually called an aura or an astral body, which is, in the conversation we're having, would be the Reiki energy, the living life force. So when we think about that energy, which is inside of your cells, it's part of your mitochondria, it's also part of Reiki. It's that, well, what is it? I can tell you what it does, where it goes, how it goes. Yeah, but what is it?
Hmm.
Silence. I don't exactly know. And this makes me think that the total absolute truth, silence.